Is that on? We're on. We're here. It's NFL Talk UK live, Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us. Tom Julian here with Jeff Reinebold, our Sky Sports analyst, coach, and just NFL guru generally. Jeff, always great to have you.
It's good to be here, always.
Can we just take a rest for a minute? Because the NFL, we get to this point in the season and it just rolls and rolls and rolls. And there is no shortage of huge news every single week, am I right?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. One of my coaches last playing, he said, boy, you can rest when you're dead.
Yeah, that's it.
It's just the way it is in the National Football League.
And it feels like that as well, where you have the season, it's so intense, then you have the postseason, then you have the draft, you obviously have the combine before the draft, you have free agency, then you have training camp. It doesn't feel like, I know people talk about the NFL being such a long off season. For people inside the game, it doesn't feel like there's any off season.
No, and that's really the way the league wants it, Tommy, because they want and it's good business, because if you think about any business, if you're in the marketplace and you capture a corner of the marketplace, you want to expand, at least hold on to what you have, but you want to expand it. So you have to be in the people's eyes, you have to be in the news, you have to be relevant all year long. And I think the NFL has done a great job of that, because as you say now, the season stretches all the way now from September to February.
Yeah.
Then you've got the combine. Then you've got free agency. Then you've got the draft. Then you've got OTAs, mini camps, and coaching schools. Then there is a short 3-week break before you come back to training camp, and that's all there is.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're able to tell us, Jeff, does that rile other sports? Like someone like the MLB commissioner, for example, are they looking at the NFL and going, what are you guys doing?
It's so different. I think basketball's trying to emulate it as much as they can, but with their draft, hockey does it with their draft. The baseball draft is so different, because where in football we have 32 teams with 7 selections apiece. In baseball, you've got all the baseball teams, and they draft, I think, 25 or 30 rounds of guys. So the impact of the draft is not as great. You don't see guys go directly from the Major League Baseball draft very often right into Major League Baseball. The NBA draft has kind of become anticlimactic too, because they have a lottery, they have all a number of different things. So I think the NFL has really maintained the leading edge in sports, professional sports, particularly North American professional sports, in staying in the marketplace. And that's tough in a contact sport. It's not like soccer where you can play, I don't know how many games they play, but even hockey they play 82, and baseball they play 162.
Yeah.
So football, you only get 16 chances and in the playoffs. So again, it's tougher to stay in the marketplace, and the league's done a good job of marketing themselves.
Yeah, before we go on there, I just want to say hello to the guys that have joined us early on. I'm just looking at
Jack is back.
Jack Humphrey, John Banger. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Thank you for joining us. Guys, please do get involved in the comments. Get your questions in for Jeff, because we're going to be here for the next 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and we're going to talk a lot of ball.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the thing, Tommy, that this is so good. What you guys have done is so good, because this does give the fans a forum. It gives the fans an opportunity. We're interested in hearing. I want to hear what your take. So, John, whoever your team is, let's hear what you have to say about the game and about, your opponent this week and how you played last week, all the stuff that makes the game so great.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start off with some of the biggest and saddest news of this season, I think, so far. Carson Wentz, he's out for the season. Philadelphia Eagles quarterback he's done his ACL and he's finished for the season. And the Philadelphia Eagles are, I wouldn't say that necessarily they were the most surprising team. They were expected to be good but not great, maybe. Got a great offensive line. And now you take away one of the most exciting players in his second season, a potential MVP candidate. Jeff, how does the Eagles' Super Bowl run look now?
Well, this is interesting, because I spent 3 days with them in training camp when they were doing some interactions with the Dolphins. It was an amazing 3 days, and got the chance to be on the field and be close to Wentz and watched him work and talked to Doug Peterson about him. And it was interesting. Doug said to me, I said, first question I had for him was, hey, Doug, how do you like your quarterback? because Doug had played quarterback for me once upon a time. I said, "That's how you like your quarterback?" And he goes, "Jeff, he's a little hard-headed, but he said he's a great piece of clay to work with."
Yeah.
And I think that hard-headedness might have got him in trouble in that Rams game, because he's so competitive and he wants to win so much and make an impact so much that probably, you know, if he had to do it over again, I'm sure he'd do it the same way, although you'd hope he didn't get the same result. Losing him to that ACL is going to be tough. But, you know, again, Howie Rossman's done a good job of putting that team together. You know, they lost Peters, their Pro Bowl left tackle, and everybody said, well, you know, how are they going to be able to run the ball? They can't protect him. And that offensive line is playing as good as any offensive line, any offensive line, in my opinion, in the National Football League together as a whole. You know, so they've overcome the loss of a linebacker. They've overcome their top special team player being out. They've overcome a tremendous amount already. And I think that what Doug has built there, the chemistry he's built there, the culture he's built there, is about next man up, which everybody talks about, but until you actually do it, it's just talk. Obviously, I think Jay Ajayi, you know, that trade now even looms bigger, because here's a guy that you can lean on for 20 or 25 carries if you need to, and they're going to have to rely on the running game a little bit more. But again, that'll help their defense, and their kicking game's outstanding. And I just really think the Eagles, while I think it's drawn everybody closer together, Tommy, I think the Eagles are still, to me, they and the Vikings are the class of the NFC.
It's interesting because I saw your tweet at the end of the weekend, which said kind of, you don't think that the Eagles were done in this because the NFC is so tight. I kind of disagree, because it's such an important position, but they have a quality backup in Nick Foles.
I mean, you're right. Foles. If you look at Nick Foles, he's got a winning record as a starter in the National Football League.
Yeah.
He's been to a Pro Bowl. He led the Eagles, I believe it was 11 wins one season.
Yeah.
You look at what he's done. He's a talented kid. He's been there, done that. He's not like you're putting a rookie in the game. He's not going to be afraid of the competition. He's not going to be overmatched, you know, with what playoff football is all about. Yeah. And he does have a great supporting cast to lean on. You know, if you get it close to Alshon Jeffrey, if you get it close to Nelson Aguilar, if you get it close to Zach Ertz. I mean, you think about this team now. They lose Zach Ertz, and what do we get? Selleck comes in, Burton comes in, and they just play lights out. So this is a very deep and very good football team in Philadelphia.
Next man up, as you say. Welcome to Jamie McKettrick. Again, these names are coming in thick and fast, and they're tough. He's got a question early doors. Hey Jeff, do you think the Steelers changed from zone coverage to press man after seeing what? Do you see a change of coverage from zone to press after seeing what the Dolphins did on Monday night to the Patriots?
Well, you know, that is really
that was a good question. Wow,
that's a great take. You know, I watched that tape real close. As a matter of fact, Takio and Neil and I are going to do as part of the lead up into the game, talk about, you know, the Dolphins did a phenomenal job against the Patriots, and particularly in third down. You look at their third down success last week; it was amazing. What they did, as you said, was they walked the corners up. They played press man. They didn't give Brady clean throwing lanes. You made him make every throw a good throw.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get the questions up.
And they competed really well outside. I think that's a diametrical opposite from what Mike Tomlin believes in. He's come from the Tony Dungy school. He was a DB coach for Tony at Tampa Bay. Yeah. He believes in the Tampa 2 system. He believes in playing zone, all eyes to the quarterback, drive on the ball. But I'm going to tell you something. If you do that with Tom Brady, if you play zone against Tom Brady, he's proven over his career that he'll slice you to pieces. Now, 10-2 against the Steelers.
Yeah.
Part of that is because the Steelers are a zone coverage team. Here's the deal. If Joe Hayden can come back and play this week, that gives them a chance to at least press one of those guys. Now, again, the thing that the other advantage Miami had that Pittsburgh won't have against New England is that Gronk was out last week, and that's a huge mismatch problem.
Yeah, so the 10-2 record absolutely astounds me, Jeff, because the Steelers have been quality. It's not like they've been a kind of mishmash franchise over the last 6-7 years or whatever. Why does Brady raise his game against the top players or the top teams, or is it just one of those where you say it's a mishmash of styles and Brady's just coming out on top?
I just think that when you, and again, if you look at who he's mostly successful against, and you look at, quote, the formula to beat him, I'll go back to, the AFC Championship game a couple years ago when we saw Wade press everybody across. Now, they had 3 corners that could do it, but they pressed Amendola, they pressed Edelman, and they doubled Gronk with a number of different ways, with a safety, with a linebacker, a bunch of different stuff, and they had great edge rushers. Now, what remains to be seen with me for Pittsburgh is, can those 2 edge rushers, young guys, Bud Dupree, I think in his 2nd or 3rd year, first-round draft choice, and T.J. Watt on first-round draft choice on the other side, can they get consistent pressure against those New England tackles? If they can, they got a chance. But if they don't get there, if they can't get there, if they can't affect Brady in the pocket, then particularly if they're going to play zone, he'll cut them to pieces.
I'm going to put the pressure on you, Jeff. Who's going to win that game?
You know what? It's so hard for me to envision the Patriots losing 2 games in a row at this time of the season when there's so much to play for. Yeah. Tomlin said a couple weeks ago that his guys were definitely looking forward to that matchup. A media guy asked Belichick the same question after the game. It was a phenomenal response. Go to Google Belichick's press conference. It is priceless this week.
He absolutely shuts down Jets, as he does every week, but he just cuts them right down, doesn't he?
It's classic, and he looks absolutely miserable every second he's on the podium. So I think that it won't be a lot of fun to be around that office in New England this week, but he's going to do a great job of coaching this football team and getting ready to play.
Jamie, what a great question. Thank you for that.
Jamie knows a little bit about football now.
He also knows about our football as well, Jeff, British football. He says, P.S. remember not to wear your Leeds jersey in Manchester. You will be in serious trouble if you pull that one.
Is that right?
Oh, they hate each other. Yeah, they're like the Bengals and Steelers.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Don't do that. They're 2 old classic teams.
I just might get off the train with that.
Oh no, because I'm going to go with you. That's going to be we're going to be in trouble. More about our Manchester trip in a little bit. We've got some great questions. So I got John Benger's name right. So that's a good start. He says, Jeff, as a defensive guy, when a zone team goes up so we're still on Steelers here. When a zone team goes up against a guy like Antonio Brown, would they play a man on AB and zone otherwise, or do they totally change their defense? These questions, guys, are absolutely phenomenal, and this is why we're doing this. So thank you.
Absolutely, because we can't get to these the way we should get to them on the podcast, really, because we just don't have enough time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And obviously during the games there's no interaction, so this is our time to really talk ball like this. All right, here's what I say: if you look at this thing. And Belichick has always been a guy who believes in taking away what the other team does best. So if you say that the number 1 threat, and it was interesting because Takeo and I had this conversation, Takeo really believes that they'll try and take away AB because he can score the fastest, right? He can take it, the distance on you.
Yeah.
Well, if you do that, then again, now you're talking about taking your best corner, putting him over there, and you probably better have help on top of it.
Yeah.
When you do that, Tom, now you've taken and you've really made your box thin. And the problem for the Patriots in this case is you're already giving up more yards per rush than anybody in the National Football League. So if you thin out the box so that you can cover AB and take him out of the game, Le'Veon Bell might get 30, 35 carries. He should, if that's what they get. And when he gets 30 or 35 carries, he has a chance to really rip you. And I guess it's one of those things with the Steelers. You can die quick or you can die, slow, but you're going to have to pick away. And on top of it, let's say, and Le'Veon's only issue, in my opinion, as a player, is he has a tendency to be injury prone. If he gets hurt and can't finish, then you look at the Steeler lineup and you say, what about Juju Schuster? I mean, that kid's had a tremendous rookie season.
Yeah.
What about Martavius Bryant? He's a great, big, long receiver who has let me use the word here, proclivity for big plays.
Wow. This guy, he's not just a coach.
But then you also have Jesse James at tight end who's playing extremely well for him. So Big Ben's got a lot of guys he can throw it to or hand it to that can make plays for him.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of questions coming in about this game. This is obviously the biggest game of the weekend, right? And it's live on Sky Sports, so that's quite exciting for you because that's what you love, right? You want the best teams on national TV, and
that's why. That's why to me this is the greatest job in the world, because I get to come over here at the business, as we say over here, at the business end of the season, where every possession, every down, every quarter, every game is huge. And, there's so much riding on this game when you consider home field advantage in the AFC is so critical, because if you're Pittsburgh, the last place you want to play the championship game is in Gillette Stadium, up in Boston. Yeah. And if you're the Patriots, you certainly don't want to have to go to Pittsburgh and play, in front of all those terrible towels.
Yeah. Joe Vidler, we will get to your question because it's another great one. I'm just going to touch on Harry Rhiannon Angarad Thomas. That is some name as well. Goodness me. Should AB be in the chat for MVP this year? Don't often see that.
It's never happened with a wide receiver, and I think that certainly he's had that kind of season. Now, when you go back into that, and this is where we go round and round about this, right? Is it most outstanding player or is it most valuable player?
Right.
Well, if it's truly a most valuable player, had the Steelers lost AB for the season, they would still be, I'm not sure they'd be 10-2, but or whatever they are right now, but they would still be in a position to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you look at a team like Seattle, who's fighting their they're fighting for their life, to win that division that they're in. If you take that quarterback away, you take Russell Wilson out of that Seattle offense, and that Seattle football team is a 5-win team.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is the mark of the most valuable player in the game. And I think that's why, again, Brady should be in the conversation, and certainly Carson Wentz was early on.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Vidler says, with Patriots missing big players, Steelers missing big players, is this the best time, and this is a question close to my heart as well, for Jacksonville to make a real run? But you don't, at the Super Bowl, you don't just look at Jacksonville now, Jeff. You look at Los Angeles Chargers as well in the AFC, who are an exciting team, again playing on Saturday night against the Chiefs in a huge divisional game. And you've got a few teams there who are going to go, look, we can make a move here.
Well, I'm telling you what, after you watched Jacksonville last week, and I said this on the podcast and I said it after the game, when you look at their football team and how you win games in the playoffs, how you get to the Super Bowl, you do it first by playing great defense. Well, certainly I think everybody now sees that they are among the top defenses, maybe the best defense in the National Football League.
Yeah.
They are at a place right now, Tom, where they could do what no team before them has ever done. And I'm talking about the 85 Bears, the 2001 Ravens, all those guys. Lead the league in all of the big categories. So if they can pull that off, certainly you got a chance. Blake Bortles, who has been a punching bag for every media guy seems like for years, is really starting to make plays for him.
Yeah.
I think Scott Milanovic, the guy that they hired, who was the head coach of the Toronto Argonauts in the CFL last year, they brought him down. He's an ex-quarterback for the Bucs. He understands how to help a kid, and I think he's done a great job. Nathaniel Hackett's done a great job as an offensive coordinator, giving him things he can do. And then you've got the ability to run the football. When you can do what they did to Seattle in that game, do you remember when they downed the punt at the 1-yard line?
Yeah.
And we're off camera at the time, and I said to Neil and to Keepo, I said they got to get 2 first downs so they can get out from underneath the shadow of their own goal line, punt it out of there, and change field position. Well, doggone if they didn't take it the whole way.
Yeah.
And that's the mark of a great football team.
Yeah, and Blake Bortles comes under a lot of scrutiny, and I think a lot of it is fair. He had a great sophomore year where he really showed that he was kicking on, and then since then he's kind of regressed. But these last 2 games, the first one against the Colts, but the second one against the Seahawks, that's a statement game. That's an NFC contender, and he's getting it done. So that's
and you know what? And when
you
you look at the play calling, right? Nathaniel Hackett was aggressive with him. They threw the ball early. They didn't go into his shell. They continued to attack. He made big throws. I thought his receivers played really well for him. And that's what's going to have to happen for them to win it all. Now, again, when you look at the other side of it, and you got all that bunch and all that attitude on defense. Their kicking game is extremely good.
Yeah.
So why not Jacksonville? I mean, I know it sounds like a crazy thing from worst to first, which is another thing we haven't talked about. I think there's 4 divisions where the team that was worst last year can be first this year in the division.
Yeah, you got the Jaguars, the Rams. Who else is
Chargers?
Chargers, of course. Yeah, and even again, I mentioned the Chargers because they started 0-4 this year, didn't they? To be able to fight for the.
I mean, they were on 4, and everybody had given them up for dead. And you look at Minnesota last year; they lost 8 straight at the end of the year, and everybody said nobody even talked about them. And here they are putting a great season together and
with a quarterback that nobody bet on.
With a guy that wasn't good enough to be drafted.
Yeah.
7 rounds, 32 teams all said, nah, he's not good enough.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you look at some of the guys that got drafted in front of him, and some of them are out of football right now.
Absolutely, yeah. Carl Smith, evening fellas. Evening to you, Carl. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to everybody else that's coming on. Get your questions in for Jeff if you've got them. If not, just sit back and watch. But we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Jack Humphrey, who's been with us from the start. What did the Giants do with Eric Flowers? Move him to guard or right tackle for these last few games? Quite honestly, I've seen enough of him at left tackle. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I think Eli's seen enough of him.
Eli's seen enough of a lot of things.
But you know what? He's a kid that they've got to find a place to play, and playing out there at left tackle is just really, really demanding. And sometimes moving a guy inside with Flowers, when you get inside, the question is, do you have the strength, the ability to anchor? Because you're in there now with the big guys. You're in there with the power rushers. You're in there where you really got to have some lead in your pants. And I think he probably would be better going to right tackle and moving it that way, trying to find yourself a left tackle either in free agency or the draft.
Right.
Good thing about a season like this that the Giants have had, they're going to be in good draft position.
Yeah, well, they certainly are. Do you buy into the fact where we're getting to the end of the season now, and obviously teams like the Giants don't have anything to play for?
Don't ask me about tanking, because I don't believe it.
You don't believe it?
I don't. You know what? It's just it's so anti what football's about. Now, is it a good strategy? You can argue that one now because of the fact that what good is it to win 3 games and get the 5th pick when you could lose 3 games and get the 1st pick?
Yeah.
So, again, I get the whole argument. It's such a foreign concept to people in football. Now, I will tell you that in hockey, for example, they openly talk about it. I mean,
really?
Absolutely. I remember, because we're close to Buffalo. We're about 30 minutes from Buffalo. Mm-hmm. So you get sports talk out of Buffalo all the time. And 2 years ago, they just talked about it. It was actually documented race for the first pick in the NHL draft.
Wow.
And in order for them to do that, they were going to have to tank, basically. And they did it in some creative ways and didn't talk about it, but it was obvious that they wanted that first pick.
Yeah, and let's talk about a team that is still out, no wins. The Cleveland Browns. They've got a new GM, John Dorsey. We talked about him a bit last week. We kind of speculated that he might be the guy. And he has been quick to make his presence.
I tell you what, you called that one now.
Well, yeah, I don't get many things right, but that one, you listen well enough, and sometimes things. It
was great. It was a great call.
So John Dorsey is in, and he's made his presence felt. Kenny Britt, no longer a member of the Cleveland Browns, signed a $32 million 4-year contract just less than a year ago, and now. Jeff, he's going to potentially play for a Super Bowl. He signed a 2-year deal with the New England Patriots. How does a player go? Well, we can talk about this, Jeff. 1,000 yards for the Rams, 6 touchdowns, only 2 touchdowns and less than 250 yards for the Browns this season. John Dorsey's seen enough. He said, no, thanks very much. Bill Belichick's seen enough and gone, I can make something happen here. Where do we come down?
I think it's really interesting with this kid because he's a guy that has a tremendous amount of ability. he's never really played to the level of his ability over his career in the NFL for whatever reason.
Yep.
I'm sure some of it's not his doing, some of it is his doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you look at what they're doing here is they're making a statement, if you will, and they're cutting their ties to certain decisions that were made by Sashi Brown and the regime previous.
Yep.
He was kind of the golden child, their big signing in the off season.
Yeah.
So again, that sets him up as the other guy's guy, which means that can sometimes you get into the political thing where I just think that it was interesting what Dorsey said today, and he said that Sashi Brown and the people before just didn't bring any real players to Cleveland. Well, that's a very thinly veiled shot at Kenny Britt, right? So, I think that this is a very typical Bill Belichick move. It's a no risk to him move.
Yeah.
I mean, when he picks him up for really not much risk at all, financially or otherwise. And if the kid turns out to be a great player and uses this like he should to get his career back on track, good for them and smart by the Patriots. If not, Patriots will cut him in a few weeks and just we'll move on. Yeah,
and you talked about the other guy's guy. Do you think it's also a bit of a thinly veiled shot at Hugh Jackson? Because, I mean, Hugh Jackson and Sashi Brown have done this thing together. It's not worked for whatever reason.
Well, I think I really, as I was reading between the lines with Dorsey's comments today, it was really, I won't say clear to me because you can never know, but I've been in this league and been in this game long enough to know how it works.
Yeah.
When Dorsey said that the people before hadn't brought Hugh good enough players, and that Dorsey said, I really like Hugh, it's not his fault, it's, it basically pinned it all back on Sashi Brown and those guys.
Right.
That tells me that there was, prior to this thing happening, Sashi Brown getting fired and all, there was a internal power struggle. There was a kind of a Sashi against Hugh deal. It may have started with, our first, shot of the cannon with the McCarron thing. But, I think what Dorsey's saying is that it was all their fault, not Hugh's fault.
Right.
And he talked about, hey, our reality is we're 0-13. We've won one game in 2 years. Well, here's the truth. If you've won one game in 2 years in the National Football League, that it's not just one or two guys that's to blame. It's a whole big problem, a much bigger problem than Sashi Brown or Hugh Jackson or any one or two guys. It's a number of issues, and that's what makes getting the thing turned around such a process. And every time they change, they go backwards.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about, you said 4 teams have gone from worst to first this year. Are Cleveland, do they have the right pieces in place to be able to go, they hit on the right quarterback next year, are they able to put pressure? I mean, it's a tough division.
When we look at that statement, right, and we talk about worst to first, so you're talking about what teams? You're talking about San Diego or Los Angeles in that division.
Yeah.
Well, what do they have? Number one, they've got quarterbacks.
Yeah.
All right. So if you pick another position where somebody might go worst to first, which I think is New Orleans, in that division, they got a great quarterback. If you don't have a great quarterback, I don't care how much you work, you're not, or other guys you put around him. It's so hard to do in the NFL. So is Deshaun Kaiser that guy? Not what I've seen.
No.
Now, you would have asked me that same question about Jared Goff last year at this time. I would have said not based on what I've seen. But what's going to be the catapult to get him to the next level like Jared Goff was? Well, obviously, what was it? It was Sean McVay and that coaching staff.
Yeah.
Well, Hugh's right there right now, and he's not been able to squeeze more than one win in 2 seasons out of that team.
And he's supposed to be one of these quarterback whisperers.
Yeah, I hear that all the time, and it's like,
We'll see. We'll wait and see, because if he does have the support of the Browns management, then we'll see him again next year. I want to get to Nick Ludlam's question. Nick's a regular on NFL Talk UK, so thanks for joining us, Nick. And I'm pretty sure I saw on Twitter that he was supposed to be in the Star Wars movie right about now, so maybe he snuck out to watch this instead. I think that's not a bad...
Oh, I thought he was in the movie like he was going to...
Oh, he doesn't star in it.
C-3PO, those guys.
He's Jar Jar Binks. No, I'm joking, he's not. That's unfair. How infuriating is Marquise Goodwin for Shanahan? He drops the ball most of the season, but is somehow on the verge of a 1,000-yard season, and his speed has few equals. Obviously a former Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, he's a rare guy. I mean, Marquise Goodwin, when you watched him at the University of Texas, because he was playing there when I was at SMU, so we got a chance to see him play. I mean, he has just such incredible raw speed, and he's a great long jumper. I mean, he's got all the explosiveness you could ever want in a guy.
Yeah.
Inconsistent hands, inconsistent catcher, was not a finished product as a receiver in college. But because he could run like he could run, people always are going to give you a chance. And I think that what you're getting with him is what you're going to continue to get with him, because he isn't a great route runner. He isn't a guy with great hands, but he is fast enough, a la Ted Ginn, that he's going to make plays for you.
Is he somebody, I don't know, like if you get him on the practice field, is he a guy that's going to work? So, like, he just doesn't get routes, but he works as hard as he can, and he's better than what maybe he should be, or is he actually the other way?
I think when you look at it, and it's not a criticism, it's just an observation. When you look at it, when he was at Texas, with what they did offensively, he really didn't have a great background as a receiver. And then you factor in that in the spring, when you have all those winter workouts and spring football, 20 sessions of spring practice, he's out running track. So he missed all of that. Yeah. So he's really kind of still behind the developmental curve. And the reality of it is, Tommy, when you're in the season in the National Football League, you don't have a lot of time to work on individual fundamental skills, which is where he needs to continue to grow.
Oh, I thought that was funny, because he was at the Bills, right? And he decided to go for the 2016 Olympics, and he didn't make it. And that's such a risk when you're not a key man. I know, you're putting your career on the line there.
Yeah, and I think with him, and I think he would probably tell you this if he was honest, track and field is probably his number one love.
Right.
And that's how that was his identity for most of his career, and he played football because he could run fast and catch deep balls. And he's gonna have to learn, if he's gonna take that next step, he's gonna have to learn how to be a finished receiver. The good thing is he's playing in San Francisco, where Shanahan understands what it takes, and I think he's in the perfect system to grow and be that guy.
Fair enough. John Inslee, thank you for joining us. Sam Rhodes, who's a former colleague of mine. Sam, thank you for watching. I'm sure I'm going to get pelters in the office probably tomorrow. Joe Vidler.
Is he a Villa guy?
No, Sam Rhodes? No, big Chelsea guy. John Inslee's a Villa guy. Okay. Sam Rhodes is a big Steelers fan as well. Joe Vidler comes back. Where do you think Ebron, Abdullah and Ansah will be next year? They all have potential, but yet to realise it, Jeff. This Lions team.
Boy, I tell you what, I know they shopped Ebron around all season, and he's been a disappointment for them. He's so talented and has all the things you look for in that move tight end. The guy that has the athleticism and can catch the ball down the middle of the field, and he's got a good route runner. He's like a lot of them are now. He's an okay blocker. He's not a great blocker, but it's never really happened for him like everybody anticipated. You look at his skill set and you go, man, this kid could be one of the top tight ends in the NFL.
Yeah. But
it's just not happened for him, and it's not because he's playing with a bad quarterback. Abdullah, on the other hand, the issue with him is, number one, staying healthy, and number two, not putting it on the ground. Mm-hmm. It's hard to play him in passing situations, because unless you're going to free release him all the time, because he's not a great blitz pickup guy. So he has some limitations. He is a good enough guy, in my opinion, as a running back that you can start him and play him. But he's not a 3-down back, though.
Yeah. Fair enough. Before we get onto the Manchester stuff, because I really want to talk about that, that's really exciting. I want to talk about Sky Sports this weekend, because there is a bumper pack of games, right?
Great games.
With the Saturday games, and I want to get onto that as well. You've obviously got Thursday night football, you've got 2 on Saturday, you've got 3 on Sunday, and 1 on Monday night as well. You're spoiled for choice, right? And there's some good games this weekend. Obviously, the Sunday nights are the ones to pick. So you've got the Packers at the Panthers, which is from 5:30 on Sky Sports, and then the Patriots at the Steelers. That is one that you get comfy in your chair, Jeff, and you stick on the telly.
I'm going to tell you what, don't
brilliant.
sleep on that Packers Panthers game, because 12's back in the game now. You know that the happiest guy in the stadium is going to be Jordy Nelson.
Yeah.
And Mike McCarthy probably the second happiest, and the left tackle probably the third happiest. But they've established, McCullough has given them some stuff as a running back. That's always been a problem from them. You look at historically, they've struggled at that position. Drafted guys that didn't work out. Eddie Lacy, just couldn't push himself away from the table enough to become a great back. And so this McCullough kid, I think, is a legit guy. That would really help them if they can run the ball a little bit. But you're going against a Panther defense that is salty. And I mean, great pass rushers on both edges, 2 of the best linebackers in the NFL inside, and I think an undervalued secondary. So I think it's going to be a battle. I think it's going to be tough for a guy that's sat for as long as he's sat to come out and not have some ring rust on him. Yeah. And I think that Panther defense will make it tough on him.
Yeah, so Aaron Rodgers has been out for, almost 2 months, broken clavicle. It's tough to come back from and just start throwing 350 yards and 4 TDs.
If anybody can do it, though, that's the guy that can do it.
That is totally it. But I think you raised this, and you might have said it on the podcast as well, Jeff, having had Aaron Rodgers out for so long, has that made the Packers a more complete offense?
Well, I think the thing, it's done 2 things for them. I think, number one, it forced them to find a running game, right? And we talked about the Lions a second ago. That maybe would be the thing that would help the Lions the most, was, as sad as this might sound, to lose Matthew Stafford and have to find another way to move the ball and not be so reliant on that one position. Yeah. The Packers had become that. They had become so reliant on Aaron Rodgers making plays that they kind of really just got away from even any kind of commitment to running the football. They found a running game now, and I think too the other thing about this is you now get a real good look at Brett Hundley, and that's a tough thing to do in a season where you're competing for a championship. But he's had to play, and he's had to play in big games, and he's had to make throws, and he's had to do it in an environment that is not anything like training camp. Yeah. So I think that's been good for him, and I think it's been good for the Packers, because they'll be able to really sit now, and Teddy Thompson and McCarthy and the brain trust of the Packers really have a chance to sit and take a look at him and say, this is either a guy that we think can be the next guy, or we got to go out in the draft and find us a guy. Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see what they do, because he had a mixed bag, didn't he? He won some tight games and showed enough, but it must be so hard knowing that you're Aaron Rodgers' backup and still practicing as hard as you can, working as hard as you can, and then being thrown in there and going, holy moly, this is real now. Well, think about it now. You go, it's been years since either Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers wasn't playing quarterback for that team, and so it's the same thing Aaron Rodgers faced. I mean, he was a guy that slipped to him in the first round, and slipped to him, and then finally they were able to take him. He sat and watched and waited and learned and competed, and then it became evident to them that it was time to move on. Now, that's a huge risk when you're talking about letting go of a Hall of Famer to go to an unproven guy. Yeah. But that happens to everybody. I think that's why this is so good for the Packers, this experience.
So let's move on to Saturday's games. And yes, we talked about it. Jeff and I are heading up to Manchester. NFL Girl UK. If you're on Twitter, follow her. She's great. She does loads of great stuff for UK fans. And she's hosting an event in Manchester on Saturday, and you and I are going to be there.
Yeah, you know what? This kind of happened, I don't know, maybe a month ago, or even before we came to England. You and I were talking about ways that we could get more involved, and that we could, begin kind of the grassroots this thing, and not make it where we're looking to make a profit, or there's really nothing in it for us other than we're trying to grow the game.
Yeah.
And reached out to Liz, and she mentioned that she had a fan gathering on the 16th in Manchester, and you and I just made a decision last week. Hey, let's go up there. We'll have a chance to sit with the fans, talk ball, hopefully meet some coaches, talk some football with the coaches, and just spread a little aloha to the NFL fans up there. Kind of our Christmas gift to the fans of Manchester.
Yeah, Jeff and I both live in London, so we've held a couple of tweet ups down here. It's easy for us to do that kind of thing, and we will look to do that again once the playoffs come rolling around. But this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a good point you brought up. I'm glad you brought the tweet ups up, because those things have turned into really a tremendous. We didn't know what we were doing when we started it last year.
No, we're still learning.
But the two we've had this year have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
I can't wait to do another one after the holidays as we get close to the playoffs,
because
it's a time for all the fans to get together. And whether your team's in the playoffs, not playing, whatever it is, getting together with other NFL fans just to chop it up, talk, spend some social time together and create a community of NFL fans here in the UK, because it's been so much fun watching this thing grow, and being just a little part of it is really cool.
Yeah, and so what we're going to do next, or this coming Saturday, is Jeff's offered to do a clinic with coaches or players or anybody really who wants to learn the game a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to arrive pretty early, and we're going to hit the bar one way or the other, and if you're in Manchester or if you're close by and you can come along, we'd love you to drop by, ask any questions, basically do like this, but live. So you can come, you can ask Jeff your questions. We're hopefully going to get ourselves a little whiteboard or blackboard or something, and we can really get into the X's and O's of things.
And Tommy, it's funny, that's how guys learn this game.
Yeah.
That's how coaches learn this game. Now, in my time as a young coach, when I was, standing there starry-eyed listening to Tom Moore talk about offense, or Jim McNally talk about blocking schemes, or Lester Hayes talking press man coverage. I wrote everything down. I didn't care where. And then you'd go to the social hours after the clinic, and you'd sit over a napkin, and you say, well, what would you do against this, and why do they do this, and that's how you learn the game. And that the tough thing is that environment hasn't been made available to the coaches. Mm-hmm. And that kind of communication, that kind of sharing of thoughts and ideas is, again, where we want this game to go to. And the more the fans know about the game, the more the fans really understand the game. And the fans here have made a quantum leap in 10 years.
Yeah.
But, I think what it's done, and I may be wrong about this, but I don't think so, I think it's created more and more of a desire, more and more of an appetite for the fans to learn the game.
That's totally right. I think I'm the product of that. I kind of got into it kind of 6 or 7 years ago, and even from then, the amount of access that we've got to talk about NFL, and obviously I'm completely lucky because I've got to work for Sky and I've got to sit with you and then do this. But even watching it on TV, it was just like every year there was a little bit more, and you got Facebook and then Twitter, and then NFL UK are doing more, and the live shows and that kind of thing, and this seems to be the next step. And Harry has said on the comments there, come to Cardiff, and sure,
we will be in Cardiff. We're coming to Wales. Mark my word. It's probably going to be about the 3rd week in January, but we're coming to Wales.
Yeah, wow. There you go. There's an exclusive for you. And it's grown, and I think that's the thing. I think some NFL fans in the UK get a little bit frustrated because it's so London-centric. The games are all here. The TV studios are here. NFL UK is here, and it's like, why don't you come to Edinburgh, Dublin? And there's only so many weekends that's possible. But
and I think that's valid. All of that is valid.
Yeah.
And so if it's perceived that way, then let's break down the stereotype. Let's break down the perception, and that means you and I are going to, this week it's going to be Manchester, and who knows where. I don't come over here to, and as hard as you work, the free time that we have is we love to do this. We love to talk football and bring football to the fans, and I think that's we're grateful to have the opportunity to come to Manchester.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the plan, that is the dream. And if you are part of a team in somewhere in the UK, then we'd love to hear from you. If you can let us know and you say, look, we train on a Tuesday night or on a Saturday afternoon or whatever it is, get in touch with NFL Talk UK, drop us a message, because we can then start to make that happen. We need to have some sort of the kind of logistical side of it. I know it's the boring side, but once we get that in place, then the floor opens up and we can really go for it. Harry says something else here. I've been following since 84, 85. And he says he agrees with you, Jeff. Last decade, massive jump.
Oh, massive jump. You know, and it used to be, and it's really challenged us in television and broadcasting. It used to be that you could speak in generalities and you could, you know, make a joke and, you know, and that was enough, right? Well, that's not enough anymore. I really sense that there is such a desire to really understand the game. And when you look at the pundits in the other sports and what they do, you know, with the telestrator and what they do, you know, I think that's now our next horizon. And you know, I just really think that there's an appetite for it and a need for it, and the more the fans understand the game, the better they're going to enjoy the game, and the more the passion they're going to have for their team.
Well, so the Saturday night games are they're very interesting, actually. You've got the Chicago Bears, who seem a little bit rejuvenated. They're kind of up and down, and you've got the Detroit Lions, who refuse to go away, don't they? They play at 9 p.m. Followed by the Chargers and Chiefs, who we've talked about a little bit already. That's the late game on the Saturday. As well, we've got games tonight. So if you're watching this live, we've got the Broncos and the Colts tonight, which, off the face of it, it's not an attractive game. If you're staying up for that one, you love it. You really do.
You know, I tell you what's amazing though. I was thinking about that game today because I was doing a radio piece back to North America, and I was thinking about this game today. You know, if this was June and we were talking about, okay, here's the schedule, and we're going to broadcast on Thursday Night Football is going to be late in the season, going to be Broncos and the Colts. You'd think, God, what a great matchup, right? Because you got that great Broncos defense and Emmanuel Sanders and Thomas, and you know, and then you look at the Colts and you're thinking, okay, Andrew Luck and all those receivers.
Yeah, you know. 4 years ago that could have been an AFC Championship game, right?
But
changes.
That's how it is. You know, and then you talked about. I want to go talk about Foxy and that situation in Chicago. You know, he may not survive this, but I'm gonna tell you something. John Fox done a great job there. He's, you know, he doesn't have enough players right now, and they're building that thing. They've made huge strides on defense. When he went in there, they were horrible on defense, and he's done a great job of getting the defense going. I think you see every week bits and bits and bits of Mitchell Trubisky that make you go, boy, he's got a chance. You know, they lost Zach Miller, their number one tight end, and that hurt them. But they've got Howard, the young running back, that's such a great player, and Cohen, who's so electric as a running back and a returner. They're going to get some help in receiver. You know, that's coming. So I think Bears fans have reasonable cause for optimism, and I think what we saw last week, you know, was an indication of what they're capable of.
Is there any way John Fox survives Black Monday, do you think?
I don't know. You know, it's such a tough time, and you know, I say this, and just so that people understand it. When and it's no different in Premiership or, you know, whatever, the NHL or Major League Baseball. When you fire a manager, when you fire the head coach, it's not just that head coach that is getting whacked. It's everybody in that organization that's coaching primarily, and then some of it will spill over. There'll be collateral damage in the training room, collateral damage in the weight room, collateral damage in the equipment room. And you're talking about a lot of lives, a lot of families. It's not something that I mean, we have to talk about it. We have to discuss it because it's news, but it's the ugly part of this business. I had a coach once say to me, and I thought it was one of the greatest ways I've ever heard it described. Everybody loves football, but football doesn't love anybody. And, you know, you're going to get fired. I've been fired. Everybody that I know, God, I'm trying to think. The other day I was trying to think of if I knew any coaches who hadn't been fired.
Wow.
And
even Belichick got fired from the Browns.
Yeah, the only guy that I can think of that has never been fired as a head football coach or as a football coach is Dick Vermeil. He's the only one I know of. I mean, every other guy. Parcells has been fired. Belichick's been fired. Don Shula was fired. Tom Landry was fired. I mean, I don't know about Vince Lombardi because I don't know what happened at the end in Washington. I was too young, but I mean, those are great football coaches that got fired. So it's a part of the business. It's just an ugly part.
NFL, not for long league. I've heard you say it many a time, man. And you've lived it and you've been there, and it's brutal. It's a brutal game, and we'll see what happens at the end of this year. But there's a few people who are looking over their shoulder, I guess, and looking where the next.
And we can talk about this in detail in another episode or two when it really gets down to the bending end at the end of the season. But certainly in Indianapolis, that you got to be worried about what's going to happen there. I think Tampa Bay is another one that. And what happens? This is crazy, but what happens in this deal is once the first guy goes, then there's almost like a feeding frenzy that goes on. Because if you're considering making a change, say for example, you're the GM, you're considering making a change and I'm the head coach. Well, if you see somebody like the McAdoo thing, that's already one job that's open. Mm-hmm. There's only a limited pool of guys that you may have in your mind as a potential guy. Yeah. Well, that firing may hasten my firing because you can't lose on Sean McVay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But I would not be surprised if they're not 5 to 7, certainly, changes in the head coaches.
But there's also a rule, isn't there, that coaches can't talk while they're still in the playoffs.
Yeah, you know what?
That kind of staggers things.
They've really done a great job. I think the league has done a great job of realizing how silly and unfair that rule was. Yeah. Because in the past, if you were playing in the playoffs or your team was still playing, you were off limits to another team to talk about a head coaching job. Well, again, if you're going to go deep into the playoffs, let's say you're a Patriots assistant, and you know that typically you go deep into the playoffs, and there's another guy who is on a non-playoff team that's a hot commodity, then certainly you as an owner or a general manager have to weigh, do I wait on him? And if I do, I might lose him. Yeah. And then we may not even get him. So there's that whole deal. Now the NFL has changed that rule somewhat so that it is easier. Now these guys can interview during their season.
Yeah, because I remember Matt Patricia and Kyle Shanahan from last year, and they were. I mean, and it's part of their professional focus is that actually I don't want to dabble in that because I'm focused on winning another Super Bowl here.
Yeah, so, and it really puts the coach in a bad situation because, if you do that and you go get it, and let's say you get a job and then you get bounced out of the playoffs that week, well, what are people going to think? Yeah. Now, it probably wouldn't be true, but the perception would be, he was too worried about getting his first head coaching job and didn't do a great job getting his team ready to play.
Yeah. Surely the best thing is, you can fire a coach, fine, but you can't pick up a new coach till the day after the day after Super Bowl stuff.
Yeah, and I think that would probably be a wise decision. The tough part about it is as competitive as these guys are, and as much money's involved.
Right.
You're looking at these guys are making $5 million a year, and you're an agent. You're going to get, 3% of that or whatever. You're going to find a way to get your guy in front of people.
So what you're saying is Tom Julian for commissioner, not quite yet. I need to iron out a few.
No, I mean, it's good. They're all great concepts. It's just got to put them into practice.
Absolutely. I saw a comment earlier. How much is Neil missing talking about Andrew Luck? It's been a long time since Neil has been able to.
You know what? I tell you, I give Neil a lot of credit because he's really, really a good football guy. Yeah. And it's so fun to do the podcast with him because he does understand the game and knows the game extremely well. And he's way more than just a fan or a stats guy. But his undying passion for good guys, and I'm going to say this is one of the things I like about him. He's had an opportunity to get to know some of the biggest names in the game, and almost without a doubt. Now, he will have huge respect for a guy's talent if the guy's a knucklehead, but he's talented. But it's fun to watch him pull for the good guys, the Kirk Cousinses, the Andrew Lucks in the world, the guys that are good to journalists and understand that, as a media guy, and I'm a media guy, we're not bad guys. We just have a job to do, just like you have a job to do.
Yeah, that's it. Now we'll hopefully Neil will get to talk a little bit more about Andrew Luck again next year. Let's finish with this question. I put my phone away, which was silly for me. Will anyone take a risk on Kaepernick? A lot of backup quarterbacks in the league this year having horrible years. Look at how much Jimmy has changed the 49ers. That's from Joe Vidler. All right, we're going to finish on this one, Jeff.
This is
what's going to
Joe,
happen?
this is such a tough one. It's such a political football, and so many things factor into this. If you ask me purely as a football guy, right, just as a football coach, do I think he's one of the top, let's say there's 64 starters and backups in the league and another 32, so you're talking about, is he one of the top 95 players at that position in the world? Yeah, I do truly believe that.
Yeah.
The issue is, and this is where it's beyond, maybe it shouldn't be, but the facts are the facts. It's beyond his ability. When you take him on your team, you also take on all of what comes with him. Mm-hmm. And when and I believe in his stance. I believe the things that he and Michael Bennett and these guys have brought to our consciousness because of their actions. Mm-hmm. But a lot of owners, a lot of coaches, a lot of teams aren't comfortable with the circus that comes with that. And I want to kind of draw a parallel here so that maybe viewers can understand. When Michael Sam came out of the University of Missouri and was the first openly gay player to play in the league and to be drafted in the National Football League.
Yep.
Certainly, you have to understand that when you draft him, you not only draft the player, you now draft all of the attention and all of the media and all of the focus about that kid that doesn't have anything to do with his performance on the football field. So some teams are willing to accept that. Other teams, no, he was not good. In their mind, he wasn't a good enough football player to warrant all the. It's the same thing with Greg Hardy. I mean, Greg Hardy, had the reputation and all the stuff that he had done and been accused of and tried for and all.
Yeah.
But he got another chance in Dallas because Dallas said it's worth the risk. It's worth. His talent level is so high, it's worth all the bad press that's going to come with it. Now
Turns out it wasn't.
You can say that again, I'm sure at that time that's the decision that you have to make. And much is the case with Colin, it's like, is he good enough to bring all that to the organization, all those cameras, all that controversy, all that stuff in our locker room? If he is, then you'll do it. But if you don't feel he warrants that, that's not going to be detrimental to your team, then you just got to keep your hands off of it.
To put that into perspective, when Kaepernick started taking a knee, his shirt sales went through the roof, and he was the top-selling shirt. Even though he was the backup, he wasn't even playing. He was a top-selling shirt on NFL.com. That shows how much attention, how much press, how much craziness must have been following him around, and he wasn't even playing. Yeah. And then, like you say, sometimes coaches go, you know what, I don't need that. For the guy who's going to be my very good backup, I'm going to try and find a different one.
Yeah, and again, that's where you make a decision in your life about what, and I respect his right, I respect his position.
Yeah.
But again, don't be naive enough to think that position doesn't affect how people look at you in terms of hiring you on their football team.
Yeah, it's the whole package, isn't it? You gotta fit the system, and sometimes it doesn't.
And I mean, that's true for everybody. That's true for coaches. It's true for trainers. It's true for equipment guys. It's true for everybody that works in the league. And there's some guys. I'll be honest with you, Tommy. There's some coaches that have done some pretty crazy stuff, and you go, why in the world is that guy still employed? Yeah. Well, because they feel like he's good enough and brings enough to the organization that they'll work with him through the other stuff.
Jeff, it's always awesome to sit with you and talk about the X's and O's and about the behind the scenes, and we love it. And we're going to do it again on Saturday. So if you are in the Manchester area, please get yourself along. It will be brilliant. All the details are on Twitter. So NFL Girl UK. She's got all the details for you, and I'm sure I think there's still a few tickets left. So come along if you can. Be great to chat to you live. If you can't make it along, we're going to do this again next week, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
You're going to be on. Yeah, absolutely. You're going to be on telly on Sunday night, so you can get your fill there as well. And that's it for another week. And I'm sure there's going to be a bunch to talk about again next week.
That's the world we live in, brother. Nice job.
Love it.
All right.
Cheers, guys. Take care.